Saturday, it was my bar mitzvah day, and Sunday, I had 1 million people writing my wall, 3 different things, happy birthday, mazel tov, and you really deserve this.
I'm curious, in that moment when you get this news, you must also think of your dad or your mom. I mean, I'm sure that never stops in your lives, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Gabrielle Lenahan's father, Joe, was in the South Tower. She was 7 on 9/11. Her sister emailed her Sunday night with the news that bin Laden was dead.
The news reminded me very much of my dad because I know I'm very proud of our government, and I know my dad would have been very proud as well, so it reminded me of that.
Ask any baby boomer about the day JFK was shot, and they can remember exactly where they were, what they were doing. The events of 9/11 and the face of the man behind it are seared in the memory of every American, but those who were children on that day have grown up in a new and anxious world. They've never known a time without Osama bin Laden.
Grown-ups tell kids all the time, you know, monsters don't exist. There is no such thing as the boogeyman. This was the first time in real life when we all learned that monsters do exist.
Every time I saw his face, I just ran up to my room, slammed my door shut, and just cried into my pillow the whole time.
We were kind of forced to grow up very fast.
What aspect of your childhood do you think was lost as a result of 9/11?
The fact of enjoying childhood as it is was sort of taken away from a lot of us, really.
Your outlook on life is so much darker. It's so much harder to really hope for something.
As the incredible story of how bin Laden was caught and killed has emerged, they have all thought back to the day when their young lives changed, their childlike sense of safety lost.
I watched the smoke come towards me, and I saw people fainting on the street. It was so abysmal and apocalyptic.
My mom shows up at my school shaking and frantic. I immediately started feeling the same way, and she told me, things are exploding, Chris, and that we have to go home.
All of you have really grown up in the post-9/11 world of color-coded terror alerts, massive security restrictions, bomb-sniffing dogs.
It's terrible to think, we did all sort of us grow during a war on terror. We had our childhood through that, and it is painful to think, life's never going to go back to the way it was.
Do you guys think there's ever going to be a day when you all feel safe in the world?
No. No one will ever feel safe.
No.
There's no force field around America. Just because we have a very strong military doesn't mean that no one's going to try to attack us again.
I know for so many people, especially those who have lost loved ones, that this kind of brings closure and it begins a healing process.
Is that true? Does this bring any closure?
I wouldn't say it's closure or anything. I am happy that he's gone, and Osama bin Laden is the worst villain out of any movie, anything you could possibly think of. Osama bin Laden would top that.
If it's not closure, it is certainly a big step toward healing. With Osama bin Laden now dead, Kevin and Amanda made their very first trip to Ground Zero yesterday to see the president lay a wreath and embrace 14-year-old Peyton Wall, whose story on 9/11 is so much like their own.
Peyton remembers watching her mom sobbing as she spoke to her husband and then passed the phone to Peyton. And he said to her, "I love you, Peyton, and I will always be watching over you."
Amanda feels her dad is watching over her, too.
So I lost my best friend, and now every time I hear someone say that I look exactly like my father, I just have to go somewhere and cry.
Now they look forward to the promise of a post-bin Laden era for the U.S. and for this generation.
I think it's really important for us to have this opportunity to be proud, but not arrogant. And I think as a group of Americans, I think we're ready for it.
So even growing up in the chaotic, unsafe world that you were all thrust into at very young ages, you still are optimistic.
No, there's only more room for change, for improvement.
I think this event has restored so much patriotism within us, because I think 9/11 being a tragedy brought us together. The whole motto, so to speak, of 9/11 was never forget, and now we've kind of proven as a nation, and our government has proven that they haven't forgotten.
When we come back, how close has Hollywood come to capturing the reality of the raid against bin Laden?
You're saying, wow, that's the way they really do it.
Correct. They go, wow, they did a great job.
Even though we've only seen computer animations of the raid on bin Laden's compound, you might think you have seen it or something very much like it at the movies or even in video games. They've been imitating reality for a while. So how do they get it so right? Chris Connelly found out.
If you've watched such movies as Black Hawk Down or Green Zone, the scene is familiar. An elite team of commandos under the cloak of night, deploying in a courtyard.
This is a kill, no capture mission.
Then, weapons at the ready, entering a house where their target remains unaware, moving swiftly and ruthlessly toward their ultimate prize. Because we do not get to witness actual counterterrorism raids, even on the news, scenes like these from movies and television forge in our minds a powerful image of what it must look and feel like when the real thing happens. A thing as real as the raid on bin Laden's lair.
How close have the movies come to showing us what that raid must have actually been like?
The movies have come close, like Black Hawk Down.
Retired Sergeant Major Jim Deaver spent 25 years with the Marine Corps, including work in Special Ops. For similarities to the bin Laden operation, he points to 2001's Black Hawk Down, the story of the 1993 raid inside Somalia.
The Rangers secure the outer perimeter and they fast roll from Black Hawks.
Its truth was no accident, according to its producer Jerry Bruckheimer.
We rely so heavily on research and hire people like these SEAL team guys who work with us on Black Hawk Down and the Special Forces who work with us.
So when you're watching a movie like that, someone with your experience, you're saying, wow, that's the way they really do it.
Correct. I go, wow, they did a great job.
For the last 11 years, Deaver's had a job of his own in the entertainment world, advising productions on all matters military, in such films as 2005's Gulf War saga Jarhead, ensuring authenticity in all areas.
The gear that they carried and the way they moved out of the camp, they had to always carry their gas mask with them because of the chemical agents that the same we might use, and the weapons they use.
In God's cruel kingdom.
What's not that real? Deaver knows some concessions must be made.
Normally, if it's desert, we wear sunglasses, but they don't want the actors to wear sunglasses because then you can't tell the actor's face. And a lot of times you've noticed in the movies, they'll take the helmets off.
While Jim Deaver sweats the facts, 24 co-creator producer Robert Cochran spent his years on the counterterrorism drama working in the realm of the imagination, creating storylines that the bin Laden raid recalled.
When all of us try to imagine what happened in that suburban town on Sunday, it's your images we're thinking of.
Now you know it's not exactly what it was like, but at least you have some idea of what it was like. And I think that does help. I think that helps people come to terms with things emotionally.
The emotions in this photo of the White House Situation Room during the raid have made it memorable. A real-life version of a place TV dramas and movies like Air Force One have shown us in the past.
In many shows and movies, you've seen that same shot, and it's always a little strange and eerie to know that what happens in real life is actually not that far away from what happens in art.
In counterterrorism, such thinking does have a role to play. The New York Times' Thomas Friedman refers to 9/11 as a failure of imagination, that our minds simply couldn't conceive of terrorists flying planes into buildings.
I think that's probably right, and it's there's so many things that could have done. How do you pick out that one beforehand?
But in a weird way, it is a mirror image of the storyteller's job, right?
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely is. As Mark Twain said, the only difference between fiction and reality is fiction has to be credible.
The death of bin Laden brings to a conclusion a narrative far more fraught with suspense than entertainment could ever hope to provide.
The moment when the phrase Geronimo EKIA is spoken. As someone who understands story, what's the impact of something like that?
Well, that's the climax of the story, that's for sure. In story terms, that's what you watch the whole movie for.
That's our program for tonight, but if you want to watch an exclusive, rare 1998 interview with Osama bin Laden, go to abcnews.com/2020. And coming up after your local news on Nightline, the very latest on the bin Laden treasure trove.
And on a special edition of This Week on Sunday, Christiane Amanpour will question the top Pakistani official in the U.S. about what his country knew about bin Laden's whereabouts and how much help the U.S. can depend on from Pakistan in the future. I'm Chris Cuomo.
And I'm Elizabeth Vargas. For all of us at ABC News and 2020, good night and happy Mother's Day.